Gyanam Shaksu. I'm starting. Omadganati Milandasya Gyanam Shanam Sarakaya Shaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, for I was in the darkness of ignorance. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvise Sashunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Jayashri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vansha Kalpatarubhyasha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. So I want to thank you very much, all of you, to thank very much my dear sister Rukmini Devi, who has invited me to come and share your association today. Actually, I was with you last time when our dear Sarva Mangala was online sharing with us. And it was such an experience. I found your group of spiritual seekers very, very introspective, very, very sincere. And what impressed me a lot was the loving care you have for each other and how you value each other. So just in a few words to tell you, as you can hear, I'm born in France. I was born in Paris in 1950. And I started my spiritual life on the Bhakti path in the year 69. That's when I met my spiritual master. And if you're not tired of me, in a few months, we'll have a little retrospective to tell you, to share with you how I came to spiritual life, you know. And so you've seen the theme is adventure in service. Dear Rukmini, she knows I love adventure. And I can tell you actually an open secret. And I'm sure you already know that secret. You already have experienced it. When you start spiritual life, your life becomes an adventure at every moment. It's not at all boring anymore. And we don't have actually to tolerate or to act according to the strokes of fate. We actually become the actors in our own life and destiny. So that's what spiritual life was to me from the beginning till today. Because when we become very, very attentive to details, we can see actually how the Lord is interacting with us through so many ways. So on the theme of adventure, I want to share with you a beautiful prayer that Rukmini gave me a few years ago. It's actually from a Christian priest, probably Christian Orthodox, from the Czech Republic. At that time, it was not called the Czech Republic, but it's very, very beautiful. Let us hear it. So it's addressed to the Lord. It says, "Oh God, who gives unbelievable adventures, please fill our hearts with the tenderness of your love, so that we love you in everything and above everything. And in this way, attain the fulfillment of your promises, which surpass all our desires. So adventure is the theme. And we are going to talk about a wonderful service that was given to me by my dear spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The service was actually to go to Russia at the time of the Cold War. So I want to ask anybody in the audience first, do you know who was the first Russian man to come to the holy place of India in Vrindavan? Don't hesitate, you can unmute and tell me if you know, because it's quite interesting. Anybody? No? So in French we say, do you want to give your tongue to the cat? It means, shall I give you the answer? Yeah? Okay. So that happened a long time ago. It was in the year 1891. And some brahmanas, some people belonging to the Hindu faith, were taking a bath in one of the most sacred rivers of India called the Yamuna River. And they actually witnessed a very amazing scene. A ship came and with some very strange character written on the ship. It was definitely an unknown language. And a young, light-skinned man came out of the ship. He was actually wearing an officer jacket, and there was a lot of armed soldiers around him. But they were not in the mood of fighting. They were very friendly. And the stranger was actually the Prince Nikolai II, who became later on the last Tsar of Russia, and actually who was killed during the revolution of 1917. And amazingly, he was touring different cities of India, and he came to that very holy place of Vrindavan. I think his brother was with him. There was also a scholar, and there was an artist who made a lot of paintings and drawings about this holy land. He came to a place called Keshigat. We believe it was Keshigat. And he got a benediction from the priest there. But the benediction, like it turns out sometime, was actually a curse. The benediction was to become the emperor of his land. And he did so. But we know the end of the story, you know. It was the family of the Romanov, and they got killed by the Soviets in October. So let us talk about going to Russia. You know, I will tell you next time, but I joined when I was 19 years old. And then I will skip 2 years. And in the year 71, I was serving the Lord in a beautiful mystical temple in London. In the address, and we call the temple Bury Place. For those of you who have been to London, it is actually near the British Museum. And there are some forms of the Lord. We call them deities, very beautiful. And these forms are very special, because actually the Lord doesn't have any limitation. If he wants to accept our service, he can enter a form of matter just for the sake of accepting the love of the devotees. And these forms called Sri Sri Radha Londanishvara were very, very beautiful and very alive, very present. So one day, I read in the books written by Prabhupada, our spiritual master, something quite extraordinary. It was written in a purport, in a commentary. If the spiritual master asks you to do something challenging, difficult, and if you say yes immediately, you will do a lot of spiritual advancement. So I became very, very excited, and I rushed to the Lord, and I addressed the following prayers. I ask the Lord, please, my dear Lord, you can do anything and everything. Can you make some arrangement that my spiritual master will ask me something a little difficult? And but then I told him, but please help me to remember to say yes. and then I forgot about it. So life was going on in that very beautiful mystical temple. We were chanting the holy name most of the day in the streets, and it was like family atmosphere. And we heard something very, very strange. We heard that Srila Prabhupada was actually in Moscow, behind the Iron Curtain. And I remember at the time feeling so proud of my spiritual master. I was thinking, he's so brave, he's so fearless, because probably also in America, you heard terrible things of what was happening behind the Iron Curtain. People were disappearing if they were opposing the regime. And it was a very, very dangerous place to be. And then I remember thinking, definitely, this is a place I will probably never go. Then later on, we heard more what happened to Prabhupada, why he was in Moscow. Actually, he had been meditating a lot, going to Russia. One of his dear disciples at the time called Ganeshyam, and who became later very saint in our movement, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, was at the time distributing Srila Prabhupada books in the Eastern European countries. And he was giving some reports to Srila Prabhupada, how people were actually suffering, how they didn't have, enough food, how they had to queue up very, very long time just to buy some cabbages or carrots or little brown bread. And when Prabhupada heard that, he was feeling so much compassion. He had actually tears in his eyes. And he told him, actually, these people are suffering a lot because the government, the communist regime, took some position, some atheistic position. And then material nature is withholding the basic necessities of life. So he was very, very eager to try to help. He had one disciple in Germany called Krishnadas. And Krishnadas was talking to Prabhupada about Russia. And with the help of a German professor, an Indologist, he got the names of Indologist scholars in Russia. And one day, Srila Prabhupada's secretary, called Shyama Sundar, wrote to such a professor. And he said, actually, my spiritual master would like to meet all the scholars, the Indologist scholars, and we can share, talk about the Vedic scriptures. It could be very interesting. And the professor, whose name was Professor Katowski, was a very nice, polite man. And he answered, yes, of course, we will be very, very interested in meeting your spiritual master. But that was not an invitation letter. But when Shyamasundar took the letter to the Russian embassy, that was sufficient. And Prabhupada got the 5-day visa. He was actually going alone, his secretary, Shyamasundar Prabhu, and also Aravinda, who was his assistant. So we didn't know anything about it. So they took the plane, and they had decided not to take any chanting beads with them, not to take any books with them. But Shyamasundar had a very wonderful wife called Malati, and she has so many qualities. But one of her main qualities was to be spiritually disobedient. And she was thinking, Srila Prabhupada is actually going to Moscow and he has no books. This is not possible. So without telling anyone, she took a little Bhagavad Gita. She put it in her husband's suitcase. They came to immigration, and at that time, the immigration officers were quite stern and strict. Everybody passed. It was the turn of Shyamasundar. So the suitcase was open, and then on the floor felt the Bhagavad Gita as it is, shining of its own glories. And Shyamasundara's face became white. He knew it was Malati. And so somehow or other, because it felt on the floor, the officer at the immigration became quite embarrassed. A lot of pictures were around. So after some time, he said, okay, just put it back and go. So that was the way Bhagavad Gita made her entrance into Russia, into communist Russia. Just to explain to you the situation of the books, Srila Prabhupada books at this time, I'm going to tell you a little story. At that time, the communist regime said that the Soviet Union had 3 enemies. It was rock and roll, Coca-Cola, and the Hare Krishna. So, and the books were forbidden. So later on in 2011, we had in Moscow a big festival when the veterans, the devotees came and told their stories. One of them told us, he was a full-time devotee cooking in the temple for Krishna. And he told us his story. He said, at the time, I was a KGB officer. And one time I received the visit of my hierarchy. And they came to me and they told me, actually, we have a special mission for you. And they gave him a book. You have to read this book very carefully. You can take all the time you want. You have to read the book because we have to know the philosophy of our enemies in order to defeat them. Of course, I'm sure most of you have guessed what this book was. Somebody tells me? You can unmute to tell me.
Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, yes, Kini. It was Bhagavad Gita. So the man, he was very, very faithful KGB officer himself. He took the book, he started to read it very, very carefully. But very soon he started to have a big problem. He could not see anything wrong in the book. And he started to love this book. So that was a big, big problem. At the same time, he was given a list of the people who were, the devotees who were going to be arrested. So he took the list and he took the Bhagavad Gita, he knocked on one door, and a nice young lady devotee opened the door. She got frightened. But then he says, no, don't be frightened. I have a question about Bhagavad Gita. And then she answered, and he told her also, you and your friend, you better move very, very quickly. You're on the list to be arrested by the KGB. So then he left. And a few weeks after, his hierarchy came again. And they asked him, we told you you can take a lot of time studying this book, but you are really taking a long time. What's happening? Yet he had to tell the truth. He says, I love my country. I love the Soviet Union. I love Lenin. I love Marx. I love Stalin. And but I just follow orders all the time. And I did follow your orders. But I cannot find anything wrong in this book. What shall I do? So they left the room, they discussed between themselves. And what the man said was actually logical. He just followed orders. So they tried to convince him, but there was no way, it didn't work. So at the end, his superiors had to resign from the KGB because they failed to convince him. And he also had to resign, but he was not punished. That's to show you how the books were considered very, very dangerous by the Soviet regime. So Bhagavad Gita had to find her way to come to the Soviet Union. And Srila Prabhupada came, for those who have visited Moscow, he came to one hotel that is actually facing the Red Square. It's called the National Hotel. And very soon they went to visit Professor Katowski at the Institute of Asian Studies. So Professor Katowski was a real nice man. They talked about different points of the philosophy, about what we call Vanashram Dharma, a society which is suitable for spiritual life. And in this society, in what we call Vanashram Dharma, there are different classes of men. Some men will be workers, some men will be businessmen or soldiers to protect the country. Some men will be doing commerce, business, and some will be what they call Brahmana, teachers, thinkers, scientists, so many things. But this system worked at the time because it was not according to birth, it was according to qualifications. So they were discussing these points. And that professor, although he loved the Vedic culture, he just couldn't think in another way. He had been programmed since birth. He had been programmed by the Soviet regime by the philosophy of Marx. So, but still, it was very nice conversation. And Prabhupada actually, when he wrote to his disciple Krishna Das, he told how he should address the Russian scholars or the scientists or Indologists. He says, you should ask them a question like this. What is the ultimate goal of life? What is your ideal ultimate goal of life? You can also ask them, what is the difference between human life and animal life? And also you could say, why is religion accepted by all kinds of civilized society? And what is your conception of the original creation? You know, he gave some hint, and that is the way he was actually talking with Professor Katowski. So the conversation went on and on. And at the end, Professor Katowski was very happy. Later on, he wrote kind of a very nice article for specialized reviews for the universities. But when it was finished, Srila Prabhupada asked, can I see the students? Because actually he had seen in America, in Europe, everywhere, that the people will actually go deep into Krishna consciousness, into spiritual life. They are mostly the youth, because the youth is actually a very special time in life for a human being. It's the time when everything is possible. It's a time when the world belongs to us. There is no limits. We can say actually that the limit is the sky. And we don't have, most of us when we are young, we don't have some heavy responsibilities. So Srila Prabhupada naturally wanted to meet the youth. But Professor Katowski told him, oh no, today there is no young people, no students. Can I meet the teachers then? Oh no, not today, no teachers. Actually, Professor Katowski, when he received the letter that Srila Prabhupada was actually coming, became very frightened of KGB. And he chose a day where the institute will be completely empty. Not even somebody who would clean the floor with a broom was there. So Srila Prabhupada was very disappointed. And they came back to the hotel with his two students. He stayed all together for 5 days. And the first 3 days, Srila Prabhupada couldn't meet practically anybody. I have to tell you that at this time, people were frightened to meet foreigners. They were not allowed to do so. They could go to the post office if they would come to foreigners to talk to them. So Prabhupada, he took his morning walks. We have some pictures of him, very simple pictures taken black and white of Prabhupada taking his morning walk in the Red Square, of him in front of the tomb of Lenin, the mausoleum of Lenin, and practically alone. Now, if you go to Moscow, it's so busy, the Red Square. But at the time, there was hardly anybody. You could see almost only Prabhupada walking, alone on the Red Square. And actually, Prabhupada, when he came near the mausoleum of Lenin, he said something that nobody else would say at that time. He said that the communist regime won't last more than 20 years. and at the time, the Soviet Union was so strong diplomatically, it was unbelievable. But almost, it was in 71, so almost practically 20 years later, that was the time of what we call perestroika, when the regime started to fall apart. It started with the wall of Berlin, falling. And I remember at the time I had taken up some studies, because I had to work, and so I had taken up again some studies. And I remember being in a class of economy, and my teacher just couldn't believe it. He was saying, "I cannot believe that in my life I'm seeing the wall of Berlin falling apart," So, and Prabhupada was the one who already had vision in 71. So, Srila Prabhupada was feeling disappointed in his hotel room. They got the permission to cook some special food in the big kitchen. And the servant, Aravinda, went down the kitchen, and he was cooking, and he couldn't speak Russian. It was quite an adventure there, especially when he took without permission some sugar, and things were going on, and Prabhupada was not feeling happy, because his mission was actually to help the suffering souls in the Soviet Union, and he felt he was actually like a prisoner. He couldn't talk to people. So Shyamasundar, Prabhu, his secretary, was also praying to the Lord. He was thinking, "Oh, my dear Lord, can you help Srila Prabhupada to meet a youth, somebody who is interested, some young people?" And one day, he went down to a grocery store near a bank, and he wore the traditional robe. We call it dhoti and kurta, the traditional robes of monks in India. His head was shaved with a little tuft of hair at the back, and he had tilak, the mark of the Vaishnava, on his forehead and nose. So when he came to the grocery store, one young, tall man approached him, and he spoke good English. And he asked him a question that had been historically already asked Srila Prabhupada when he came for the first time in America. But at that time, the question was asked to Shyamasundar. It was, "Are you coming from India?" And Shyamasundar, his heart started to palpitate, to beat stronger. He says, "No, I'm not coming from India, but my spiritual master is." And the young man asked him, "Do you have any jeans to sell?" Because at the time you couldn't buy anything from the West, Everything coming from the West was supposed to be contaminated. So Shamsudra said, "No, you see, I'm dressed like that. I don't have any jeans." "Oh, do you have any records from the Beatles to sell?" "Oh, no, I don't have any records from the Beatles, but, my spiritual master is also the spiritual master of the Beatles. He's actually staying in a national hotel. Would you like to come and meet him?" And the young boy, whose name was Anatoly, he was with a friend, Indian friend, whose name was Madhukar. He said, "Oh, yes, I would like to meet him." And then Shyamasundar very happily brought these two boys into Prabhupada's room. the most interested amongst them was Anatoly, the Russian one. He actually asked so many questions. He had studied a little bit already Indian philosophy. He was studying philosophy in a few other different sectors in university. So when he met Srila Prabhupada, something very mystical happened. Srila Prabhupada started to explain to him all the bases of the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. And it was so intense that Shyamasundar said, actually, I never saw Srila Prabhupada giving so much to one person in such a short time. Of course, they spoke again about Varnashram Dharma, the different classes of society, how to try to make the whole society more focused on spiritual purposes and happy. And so many other subjects. And the young boy, Anatoly, was completely captivated. They stayed together two full days. That's all. And at one point he asked Srila Prabhupada, do you think in order to spread Krishna consciousness that I should become a pope? And Prabhupada laughed. You know, the popes, they're the Orthodox priest in black with long beard. Prabhupada laughed and said, it's not necessary. So Prabhupada started to beam and becoming very happy. He could see that his purpose was actually fulfilled in meeting Anatoly. He gave the example that if you go to the market and if you're going to buy a big bag of rice, you want to see if the rice is good. So you just pick up a grain, and if the grain is good, it means the whole bag of rice will be good. So he found that boy, and that boy was actually representing the youth of Russia, like the grain of rice. It was a very good sample of the whole youth of Russia. Very introspective, very serious, and because of the hardships that the government had put on the citizens at the time, austerity was there, and austerity is very good for spiritual life. So Prabhupada was feeling very happy. Then the boy, before Srila Prabhupada would depart to come back he came back actually to Paris, first country. He told Srila Prabhupada, you know, what would be nice to help me in my mission would be actually to have a Western wife. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes. You know, Prabhupada heard. He thought it will help him in the mission, maybe. And also, they just had 2 days together. So it was still a few things to learn, how to practice. And so this at the time, we didn't know. We didn't know at all. So what happened, Prabhupada went to Paris. And then after he came to London, to our beautiful little temple of Bury Place near the British Museum. And we were not many of us in the beginning, I would say between 16 and 20, not even 20 in the temple. So when Prabhupada came, it was very intimate. We could ask him all the questions we wanted. We could assist him in doing menial tasks. very, very sweet. And I have to tell you that I was, at the time, I was in my 21 year old girl. And Prabhupada used to joke with me. You know, he was really like a father, a grandfather, eternal well-wisher. And he used to make me embarrassed because he used to ask me every time, because at the time I didn't want to get married. Uh, I thought spiritual life was not to get married, you know. I wanted just to progress and in the service of my spiritual master and to carry on the path like that. But our spiritual teacher, who had a very good sense of humor, used to say, all the girls who come to the temple, they should get married. And all the boys, they should remain brahmachari or celibate monks. And he was laughing. So I didn't want to bother with this. And every time Prabhupada came, he would ask me when I used to come to his room to bring his washing or, you know, bring some 4 o'clock dishes, meal, you know, fruits and sweet. He used to smile and laugh and said, Mondakini, you're not married yet? And I was becoming all red and saying, no, Srila Prabhupada, because every time there was a proposal, I had special awful gray saris full of holes, very ugly, that I was putting on. And I was putting a face more than a few kilometers long, you know, until the boys understood it was no need to ask again. To the desperation of my elder, wonderful god sister, Yamuna Devi. Then I was looking down all red and saying to Prabhupada, no, Srila Prabhupada. And he was laughing and mocking me, saying, oh, you didn't find anybody good enough for you? And, and then I was trying to get very quickly out of the room to stop the conversation. So then after Paris, he came to London. And we just knew only that he was in Moscow, but it was kept as a secret. So we didn't know much more about it. And one day, one devotee told me, Mondakini, can you come to Srila Prabhupada's room? He wants to ask you something. And I got frightened. I thought I must have made a mistake and I'm going to be, he's not going to be happy with it. So I knocked on the door and his beautiful grave voice said, come in. So I came in, I offered my obeisances on the floor. Then he said, come closer. And Srila Prabhupada's room was very, very beautiful. If my memory is correct, the walls were peach color, saffron color, and on the floor was blue. I remember some blue, some wood painted blue. And Prabhupada loved these colors because they were the same as the colors in his room in Calcutta when he was a child. So that was a very, very peaceful atmosphere. Then he said, come closer. Then I came. He was sitting behind a low table. So I came as close as I could on the other side. And I always remember it the same way, in a very, very normal tone, you know. And for me, it's always like the same voice he would use to ask me to go get some potatoes across the street. He said, Mondakini, would you like to go to Moscow and to marry this boy, Anatoly, and by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, help to spread the mission there. And for half a second, I got shocked. But then Shri Radhananda Ishvara, the deity, kept his promise. And I remembered my prayer. And I remembered very quickly my prayer. And then I looked at Srila Prabhupada. I told him, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada's eyes became big, big, like saucers. And he was beaming. He had a big smile. And he was very happy. Then he turned to Shyama Sundar, who was actually standing on his on his left side, and he said, "You arrange for the visa and everything." So that was. I came out of the room not really understanding what was happening, but in ecstasy, and. Then that was the beginning of that extraordinary saga. First, I decided I should learn the language. And honestly, I have to tell you, I just know a few words still now. But it's a beautiful language. So I used to sit, at Srila Prabhupada's door with, at that time we had what we called a tape recorder, very big. And I was repeating my Russian lessons. And it was such a sweet time. But dear friends, I have to ask Rukmini and Pracharani how we are doing with the times, because I hardly didn't start.
It was so wonderful. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you to be sure to share that one story. I think, Brajarani, we could do breakout groups after this, or whatever.
If we have time, let's see how the time goes. Which
Okay.
stories are so nectar filled, we may skip breakouts today. We'll see.
Yeah. So Mondakini, I wanted to ask you to share that one beautiful story when Prabhupada, it was in a Srimad Bhagavatam class, I think in London, and Srila Prabhupada asked you to chant the verse. What is that beautiful story?
Oh, yeah. As I said, we were hardly 20, maybe between 15 and 20 in the temple room. So Srila Prabhupada was sitting on his Vyasa, and he was chanting the verse, and usually volunteers, will recite. But that time he called some of us to chant the verse. And myself, I felt very, very shy. He called my name Mondakini, and I felt very shy to say the verse in front of everybody in Sanskrit. And then Prabhupada started to laugh, and he said, "Look at her. She's not afraid to go to Russia, but she's afraid to chant a Sanskrit verse." And he was laughing. And actually, to tell you, and Rukmini will agree with that, our joy was to see Srila Prabhupada laugh or smile. Of course, sometimes the spiritual master can chastise because we have to make progress, we have to purify, the demands of our false ego and the turbulence of our mind. Sometimes he has to be a little strong. But I have experienced that he was less strong sometimes with most of the ladies. He knew our soft nature and how we will be completely dismissed, at chastisement. But when we became stronger in spiritual life, he would give us the grace of chastisement.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Brajarani, I'm just wondering, could we ask Mondakini to maybe share some of the first adventures when she first went there? Because now you're leaving us on a cliffhanger. So now we want to hear, so what happened?
Okay.
What happened next?
For sure.
Yeah, maybe we won't have breakout today. Let's see how it goes. But I know you have, treasures of wonderful stories. So what happened next?
Okay, so what happened next? I had to leave that beautiful, homey London temple where my heart family, my first Vaishnav family was, and they were all wonderful. Some of you have heard there was somebody who became my long life, one of my closest lifelong friends, Yamuna Devi, in separation. There was Shyama Sundar, Guru Das. I mean, all these heroes, you know, the six first American boys and girls, three couples who came to London, who met George Harrison. So I had to leave. I had to leave the temple and to leave the worship of the beautiful deities, Shri Shri Radhanandan Ishvara, who to me, I will tell you that another time in the retrospective. They, you know, when I came, I studied what we call the impersonal philosophy. I couldn't understand that God could be a person. So it took these 2 years of service to the deity form to understand that actually the Lord can reciprocate and that he is really a person. So as a person, he was really, they were really hard to separate, to be apart from. But the Lord had answered my prayers, and off I was to go to Paris. So I went to Paris. It was a small temple, and because I had to get a visa, Shyama Sundar had to arrange for a visa. And at that time, nobody should know I was a devotee. I should go as a tourist. So when I went to the temple, some strange things started to happen. Some Russian people started to come to the temple, very straight people, you know, and started asking some questions. So we didn't say anything, even the devotees didn't know much about that project. But I understood that already KGB knew something about it. Anyway, I started to do everything needed to get the tourist visa for 7 days. And the pretense of that tourist visa was to go to see every night the Bolshoi ballet dancers in the big, you know, in the big hall in Moscow. So that was what I was supposed to do. And at the time, we were all dressed, isn't it, Rukmini, in very simple saris that were actually a long piece of saffron cloth for unmarried lady and a yellow one for the others. We had no jewels, no makeup, no fancy things, you know. But then I had to dress like a civil person. So I remember going to my family in Paris and they bought me some clothes. And it seems funny to say now, but I was feeling all naked, you know, in these strange clothes I didn't wear for 2 years. So I joined the group. We took the plane. It was a group maybe of not 20 people about. And we were actually welcomed at the airport by our Russian guide, tourist guide, who spoke perfect French. And Shyama Sundar told me, you don't take any beads, you don't take any books. So I just took some necklace with the beads to chant on the Maha Mantra. And he says, Mondakini, you know, the tourist guide, they will report everything to KGB. So you don't, you have to be very, very discreet. Huh? Don't do anything strange. just be very discreet for the mission. And Anatoly will meet you. Do you remember Anatoly, the Russian boy? That I was actually supposed to get married to. I didn't have his picture, you know. We had to be very, very careful. I didn't know the way he was looking. So we came, and my first impression of the Soviet Union at that time was very strange. When we came out in the street, it was very, very big avenues. They call Prospect, very huge avenues. And now if you go to Moscow, you would see so many endless traffic jams. But at the time, maybe 1 or 2 cars on these big avenues. Maybe, you know, the cars of some politicians or elite, how do you say in English, elite or elite? You know, elite. So, and it was so strange because everything was gray. I saw no color. It was dark, black, gray, white, but no color, no joy. People you would meet on the street, they were just looking downward. They wouldn't look to you in the eyes. You know, there was no eyes contact. They look frightened. So it was a very, very strange feeling. So we came to the hotel. It was called Metropole Hotel, a big hotel. At the time, it looked very much Stalinian style, you know, very massive. I think they redid it, you know, like the National, they redid. And then it was time to have dinner. So the tourist guide came and she started to propose some menu. And she started to say, okay, we have this dish, so this nice meat with blah, blah, blah. So who wants? People, yes, yes. Then, okay, for the others, I propose some fish with potatoes. And again, who wants? So, you know, people would say yes. And then she finally proposed some nice egg dishes. And to my horror, I discovered I was the only one left who didn't accept anything. So everybody started to look at me, and the tourist guide was very surprised. And I thought, oh no, Krishna, I'm supposed to be so discreet. I blew it from the very first second. I'm so stupid. What can I do? Prabhupada is going to be so disappointed. And I had to say in front of everybody, I'm sorry, I'm a vegetarian. I will just take some vegetables. And at the time, you know, believe it or not, at the time to be a vegetarian was very, very unusual, especially in Russia. It was actually considered a crime to be a vegetarian, or to spread vegetarianism was a crime. They would say you would harm the health of the people. And later on, when we talk about it, when persecution began, devotees were tried on the pretense of spreading vegetarianism. They would go to jail for that. So everybody was very surprised. And so the tourist guide asked some vegetables, and I took in my mind, I offered this vegetable, and I was feeling very disappointed for Srila Prabhupada that he sent me here, and it's already blown from the very start. So I went to the room already. There was a very, very big staircase, marble staircase. And just on the stair, before going to the corridor to the room, there was a tall boy standing, and he looked very stern, and he asked me, in English, he asked me, are you a monk? that was my civil name. And I thought, oh no, no, Krishna, it must be KGB already. They didn't waste 1 second. Everything is finished before it started. And I looked at him and said, yeah, it's me, I'm Monique. And he said, I'm Anatoly. And I said, oh, really? Haribol. So he says, let's go to your room. So we went to the hotel room. My suitcase was not unpacked yet. And he started to act very strange. He went under the bed, looking. He went looking beneath the paintings. And I thought, he's really a strange man, you know. And after some time, he says, let's go down. We will walk outside. And in the stairs, he told me, actually, it's full of microphones. They can hear what we're talking about. So we went to I think 2 stairs. It took a little while. And at the time, I had been in the temple practicing the path of bhakti for hardly 2 years. And I thought I was very, very open-minded. But I was very fanatical, actually. And the first question I asked to that poor man, he had met Prabhupada only for 2 days. I said, of course, you are following the 4 regulative principles. You know, in our tradition, we don't eat meat, fish, egg, we don't gamble, we don't take intoxicants, and we don't have illicit sex life. So of course, you're following the 4 regulative principles, isn't it? And he says, I try. So then I say, but you don't eat meat, fish, or eggs. Oh, most of the time, I don't. But you don't gamble? So practically not. And then we came outside, and one of the most beautiful Russian girls I ever saw was waiting for us. And her name was Svetlana. And Anatoly introduced me to Svetlana, and he said, oh, she's my cousin. But honestly, she didn't look at Anatoly with the eyes of a cousin. So I didn't ask Anatoly about the 4th regulative principle, illicit sex. I mean, sex outside marriage. So then I didn't know what to think. I thought, oh, Krishna, what am I going to do? I have 7 days. How is it? What is going to be the outcome of this, you know? And then I went back to the hotel, and I had to go every night to the Bolshoi theater to see the beautiful dancers. But, you know, now, if you told me now, oh, come with us, come and see the Bolshoi dancers, I will go very happily, and I will, you know, love to see they performing their art. But at the time, I was trained up not to waste a single second. So I started to feel very guilty going to see these beautiful Bolshoi dancers. And Anatoly, for the first days, took me to visit some very beautiful places in Moscow. Some places are very, very artistic. And I was feeling the same way, guilty. What am I doing for Prabhupada? I'm enjoying all this beautiful art, you know, and places. And I could understand that as we were supposed to get married, he wanted to be a little romantic. But I was feeling, I was just not using properly the time. So one day, after 2 days, I told Anatoly, but Prabhu, we have to preach. Oh, he said, oh, Haribol, Haribol. And then we started to visit different friends of his who were very, very interested in spiritual life. He already had the Bhagavad Gita. So he was actually lending the Bhagavad Gita to his friends, and they were copying by hand the book at night. And when it was finished, they would give back the book to somebody else. It was getting like that in the beginning. Then I tried to teach him whatever I could, whatever I knew. He was staying in a small apartment in the center of Moscow with his mother. And later on, I heard that his mother had been a secretary to Stalin, and that his father had been arrested and deported to some camps, labor camps. So I tried to teach Anatoly how to cook, vegetarian food, how to offer it, how to lead the kirtan, how to explain Bhagavad Gita to his friend, and he was translating into Russian. So at the time, I became completely taken, and I can even say I became completely in love with the Russian youth, because I never saw people who were so introspective, so honest, and they were ready to give up their freedom, ready to give up their health, their life, for the sake of pursuing their spiritual quest. That was so important to them. So I became, because of that, their strong desire, I became very indebted to them. That was the beginning of the love story with the people of Russia. So that was my first visit. We used to go to the grocery stores, and even to get in Moscow, we had to go through very long queues to get cabbage, potatoes, or carrots. Sometimes after waiting for an hour, when we came up in front, there was nothing left. Some very, very dark bread, not very well cooked, A little milk, we could get a few things, but not so many, not like now. And it was such a pleasure to share Prasadam with Anatoly, with his friends, to talk about the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. It was, and they were so happy to hear this message of hope, to hear that we are not this body, to hear that the soul is eternal, to hear that we can find again our lost loving relationship with the Lord. For them, it was so new, because
wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Because when you went to the churches, if you were young, policemen were actually not letting you go in the churches. I could just go because I was a foreigner. It was only for old people. So they took Krishna consciousness in such an intense way. So I don't know, tell me how long you want me to go.
Oh, we could listen to you all day, but Brajarani, you want to ask if there's some questions?
Yes. So
Thank you
people
so
can
much.
Thank you so very, very much. There's so much here. The reciprocity, how Krishna arranges things. You know, this just one young Anatoly running into Shama Sundar just at that moment. How he reciprocated with your request to have a service, and for him to give you this service, which I can't imagine was easy, particularly for someone who was turning away every other gentleman up to date. So
she was absolutely risking her life. She was risking her life. So let's see if there's some questions.
Yeah, so you can put your questions into the chat. You can send them to me, Brajawani Devi Dasi. We've got probably time for a question or two. So anyone has a question, we'd love to.
Do you want to hear a little more if there are no questions? Or
yeah, definitely. Why don't you think of another story you can be sharing while Brajarani's looking for a question?
Okay.
Something, yeah.
Okay. So okay. So let me tell you that I went there for 6 years. We got married. I will tell you that later. And trying to get my visa, residential visa, but KGB knew and never gave me the visa. So after 6 years, Srila Prabhupada told me that I should actually stop going, that Russia was not sure. It was before persecution, and persecution started shortly after that. And Prabhupada told me, better you serve in Europe. But I can tell you a story that is very extraordinary to me, because I could become a witness of the magic of the Lord. One day, Shyama Sundar Prabhu asked me, he told Mondakini, we have just printed the new edition of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We would like you to actually, to actually take the Srimad Bhagavatam. We would like you to take the Srimad Bhagavatam into Russia. It's hot from the print, from the press. So I say, oh yes, Prabhu. And then I started to try to think what would be the best way to take the Srimad Bhagavatam. I knew it was risky to bring books, but not as much as I would learn later on. And I thought, instead of taking the plane, maybe I should take the train. Maybe they won't look everywhere. So I took the train with my beautiful first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it was in 2 volumes at the time. I can't recall exactly, 2 or 3. And I was it was a longer trip by train. It was 3 days and 2 nights, I believe. In the beginning of the trip, one lady came to me, and she started, small talks. And she asked me, I hope you don't have any religious books, because, if you have religious books in your suitcase, the militians, they become mad after you. And, you cannot hide them anywhere. They will look everywhere. They will look under your bed. They will look in your suitcase. There is nothing you can do. So tell me, you don't have any religious book, isn't it? I looked at her with a big smile and I said, oh no. But I tried to think, what can I do actually? What can I do? Because I have these books and they have to go to Moscow. So the train was going on, hour after hour, day by day. And I had no clue what to do, where to hide them. And then I was in the corridor outside of the cabins, and I saw some young Indian men. And in my mind, the thought came, oh, an Indian man, maybe I can put the books in his suitcase because he's Indian, it won't look so different. So I pushed myself to engage the conversation. His wife came, and I asked him, we started small talks again. And at one point, he and his wife asked me, do you have any friends in Moscow? Why are you going to Russia? I told him, yes, I have a Russian friend and an Indian friend. And he looked at me, oh, an Indian friend, what's his name? And I told the name, Madhukar Tandon. And he became so surprised. He looked at me, says, but he's the son of my boss. and then I became so excited within because I knew what was actually the work, the occupation of the father of Madhukar. He was a very, very high ranked diplomat at the Indian embassy. So I just couldn't believe it. It was like being, a Krishna's witness, because again, I prayed to the Lord that, my dear Lord, I'm useless. I don't know what to do. I know that this book has to go to Moscow, but how can I be your instruments? And I could realize he had arranged everything. So with a very sweet smile, I looked at the couple and I said, oh, maybe you can help me. I have a gift for the son of your boss. It's a book, it's the Bhagavad Purana. And these militians, they're a little crazy. They won't understand. Maybe you can put it in your diplomatic suitcase and you give to your boss to give to his son. And he looked at me and said, of course, yes, no problem. So he took the key, he opened the diplomatic suitcase, he put the books in the suitcase and locked the case again. And indeed, it was so marvelous because I knew that the militians were not allowed to open that suitcase. It was like India itself. And it could contain some strategic documents. And indeed, Srimad Bhagavatam was a strategic document. Shyamasundar Prabhu said often that these 5 days Srila Prabhupada spent in Russia changed the world, And indeed, we can see that that was a fact that, as Prabhupada had predicted, 20 years later, the communist regime fell apart in the Soviet Union. So he took the books and he says, yeah, I'll give to my boss. And then I left him. He was going to go to Poland for a few days of holiday and come back to work after that. The militians came and they looked terrible to me, to quite a young girl. They look very fierce, with a stern look, very fierce. And they searched my suitcase. They searched under my bed, everywhere they could. And I tried not to smile because I was feeling so happy within. That the Srimad Bhagavatam is going to Moscow. You cannot do anything against it. Krishna has tricked you. He has arranged everything. And that beautiful verse of Srimad Bhagavatam came to my mind. That verse that says that when after Lord Krishna had left the planet, he will come as this literary incarnation, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this Bhagavat Purana is more brilliant than thousands of suns, and it will illuminate all the darkness of the age of Kali. And to tell you the truth, was when I was invited, I think it was 36 years later, for the 40th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada coming to Moscow, I couldn't recognize the Soviet Union anymore. It was not anymore black, white, and gray. People didn't look down, fearful. It was full of joy, of colors, like any other city in the world. And I understood it's because of Srila Prabhupada, because of Srila Prabhupada books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's because of all the wonderful Soviet devotees, true heroes. And now, you know, people are becoming happy. And the whole thing has changed, you know. The darkness of the age of Kali is partly dissipated. So that was the story I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll have to have you again because there's so many, many stories, not only once, but many times. So Brajarani, I know you have some announcements. I don't know if there's time. I'll just hand it over. I know you.
Yes, yeah, there were a couple of questions. I don't think we have time for them today, but I think Mondakini Prabhu will be back with us in July. And I think both of those questions.
August,
in August, thank you. And I think both of the questions that were posed will be applicable then as well. So if you can hold on, we'll hear more stories from Mother Mondakini at that point in time. So a few announcements. Number one, I think Guru Charan Padma and Manjwali Prabhus are both on the line. So it's quite lovely to have them join us. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So our next Sangha is June 20th with Dina Tarini Devi Dasi, which should be another beautiful, wonderful. I'm not sure what her topic is, but she spent much of her life partnered with and in service with Yamuna Dasi, and so I'm assuming she tells a lot of stories about her, so that may be what the topic is.
She's the one who compiled Yamuna Devi's book. So that book called Unalloyed was written by Dina Tarini from, you know, about Yamuna Devi and her life. So yeah.
So that should be quite wonderful. So that's June 20th. Again, we changed our time. We're starting at noon Eastern. And so that's great. Our European friends are giving us a thumbs up for that. That's wonderful. And so it's always at noon now. That's our time going forward. And we changed it earlier so that more people could join us virtually. Please also check out ways of joining in this Sangha with Rukmini at patreon.com, Rukmini Walker. Another way of helping and contribute to and being in service with. And there's a WhatsApp group that I will try to find the code to. So we have an Urban Devi WhatsApp group where you can find out not just what's going on in the next Sangha, but also you can also find out where others are speaking at different times. So sometimes we have we will have others of Prabhupada's daughters who are speaking in different places, and that'll get posted there. So there's just a lot of great sort of information and Sangha there. So I just posted the link to that. No, I didn't. I posted to Rukmini. Let me post it to everyone. I'm multitasking today. Okay, there's the link. So if you're not a member of that group, you can click on that link and become a member of that beautiful Sangha. And if you join there within the next 24 hours, we'll also post the link to this recording for those who came a little bit late or those who just want to re-relish in all of these beautiful stories and hear them again and again. We will post that link so it'll be available to you. And I think those are all the announcements I have today. Am I missing anything, Rukmini?
Just deepest love and gratitude to Mondakini. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for, lighting the world with the Srimad Bhagavatam, with your love for Srila Prabhupada, your simplicity and your humility. I was thinking, who could walk into the Soviet Union but someone so loving and so childlike and so compassionate, like Prahlad Maharaj, just walking into the darshan of Lord Nrsimhadev. So we're just so indebted to you for sharing this time with us, and we so look forward to having you back. All deepest love and gratitude to you. All these Russian devotees are your kids.
It's all Srila Prabhupada's mercy, and all of you, you're all so brave, much more brave. Actually, it's because Srila Prabhupada was so fearless. His name, Abhay Charan, one who is fearless, even taken shelter in the lotus feet of the Lord. Because he was so fearless, we did not have any fear, because we knew he was protecting us all the time. And if he would ask something, we knew it would be successful somehow or other. But, so all these stories, it's just to highlight Srila Prabhupada's fearlessness and bravery and unique personality. And we are just little kids, it is lotus feet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Maybe when you come back in August, you can share some of the stories of the veterans also, because I know you love those stories and it's so inspiring to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we can share the stories of the heroes, the true heroes. Yeah.
Yes, and stories of the Russian community today, because I know you're still going back there and you're still particularly working with the women back there, and so we'd love to hear about that work as well.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Rukmini, Vracharani. Lovely to see you, Guru, and Anshali, and Haribol.
Maybe everyone can unmute themselves, or Vracharani, can you unmute and we can all thank Manju?
Yes, everyone has the ability to unmute themselves.
Thank you so much. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Haribol. Thank you so much.
Please come back to Switzerland.
Yes.
You stole our hearts in Switzerland.
Come back to everywhere.
Bring our hearts back. You took them with you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Spiritual world. Haribol.
Haribol. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Haribol.
Haribol.
So this recording will be posted also, right? We'll post this.
Yes, it will be posted.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mondakini.
Hare Krishna.
Deepest love and gratitude to you. Hare Krishna.
The same.